And hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Pumpkin Copter Cast, the only video game show.
The only one. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So today I am joined by actually good YouTuber and fellow McElroy brother enthusiast, Sarah Zedig of Let's Talk About Stuff.
Hello. Yes, those are all true things that have been said about me. Hello.
Hello. So let's begin with a brief introduction about you and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm like you said, I'm a YouTuber. I'm transgender. What I do on my YouTube channel is sort of look at media from uh, just from an interpretive lens, try to find like interesting things to say about it, like asking not just why is this thing good, but why do I and why do we like things in the first place. I also have a podcast called the Trans Questioning Podcast, which is charting the progress of my transition and interviewing trans people and genderqueer, non-binary people about their experiences, just to try to create some representation for different experiences of gender. So that's sort of my things that I do.
Okay. And before I get to the rest of the list of questions, I would just like to say that a few months back I happened to interview Thor, the chief everything of the game you mentioned a while back of Heartbound, and
Yeah.
I happened to mention the video you made where you plugged his game, and he very much appreciated your words.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, onto
Well,
our regularly scheduled program.
yes.
So, when were you first introduced to video games?
I can't really remember a time when I didn't have games in my life in some capacity. I remember going to like families' houses and playing an Atari 2600. And I actually think I still have somehow inherited that Atari, and it's in a garage somewhere in Texas. I played my brother's NES a lot, and I inherited that after he got too old for it, which is a thing you do when you get a PhD, apparently. Uh, which is why I'm never going to grad school. Um, and I played a lot of like the original Legend of Zelda and Ninja Gaiden as a kid. Never getting very far. I've always been very bad at games as much as I enjoyed playing them. But the first one, like I skipped over the SNES era. That's the only like Nintendo era that I missed. But I guess besides the Wii U. But I got N64 for my birthday at some point in the 90s. I guess I would assume 97, right? 96, 97.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother got me Star Fox 64. And between that and Super Mario 64, I played those games endlessly. And Star Fox 64 is still like my favorite game to this day. And so those are like, that's sort of my early youth experience with games. It's just they were there constantly and they were more fun and reliable than regular human people.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So you mentioned the bit already, but what were your favorite game and or games growing up?
Yeah, so like I said, Star Fox 64 is still one of my favorite games, and I I I played it. I didn't realize quite how much I've played that game until I played it with somebody who was themselves a self-professed fan of that game, who played it a lot, and I was telling them things that they didn't know about the game, that like mechanics and secret routes and stuff. I've put hundreds and hundreds of hours into that game. If I were a mad person, I would probably I could probably be a speedrunner of that if I really wanted to, but that does not sound like an enjoyable occupation as much as I admire speedrunners. Another early, like, really important game for me, I think, which is true for a lot of 90s kids, would be Pokemon. The Game Boy Color was the first console that I saved up for with my own money. In as much as allowance can be called your own money. I bought a Game Boy Color, and I got Pokemon Blue, which I still have to this day. And I remember playing that on car trips and at school when I shouldn't have been, and basically just all of the time. And I think that was a formative game for me because it was, I don't know, there's something about its like art style and just its weird world that stokes the imagination, especially if you're a kid, and just got me thinking about a world full of monsters. And I think, like a lot of folks, that stuck with me.
And who would you say is your favorite Pokemon?
These days, it's definitely Sylveon, because I'm nothing if not a stereotype. Sylveon is the colors of the trans flag, and it just has a very strong transgender mood as a character. And I actually, pretty soon after I started HRT, hormone replacement therapy, I got a Pokemon. I got a 3DS for the first time, like last year. I got it, and I played Pokemon Sun, which was my first Pokemon game that I played since Silver, actually. And I got a Sylveon, and I remember taking care of her at one point, and got into a battle, and she was dirty, and I cleaned her, and she looked so sad. And then after I cleaned her, she looked so happy, and I started crying as a result. and that was one of those moments where I realized, oh, okay, so this is what they mean when they say that HRT is like second puberty. Okay, I got it. I think, generally speaking, the boring answer is just that I like the dogs. Rockruff is wonderful. I was sad when Rockruff evolved because I didn't like either of their evolutions. I like Rockruff, the little puppy. I want a puppy to stay a puppy forever.
Let's see. I have, as I've gotten more into the Pokemons, I have noticed that I've seen a lot of people establish an equal connection with the final evolution of Poplio from the Sun and Moon games, Primarina, which is very Sylveon color motif.
Yes, yeah. A lot of people really like Primarina. I picked Rowlet as my starter for Sun, because for me the obvious one. I always think of who is the obvious starter, which for me is whatever one is coolest, and cats are cool inherently. But then I say, okay, what's the one that I would be least likely to pick? And for me, it was Rowlet, so I picked Rowlet. I fell in love with Rowlet anyway.
My favorite would always have to be Shedinja, due to the fact that if you can take advantage of its special ability, you can absolutely clobber legendary Pokemon with ease. And much like Shedinja, I also am a genderless specter inhabiting an empty husk.
Yeah. That's what I love about Sylveon's moveset, is that the move that I most used was Fairy Kiss, and I just love the image of this cute little dog going up and kissing people to death. It's just a wonderful sort of power move.
Yeah. So, and what would you say is your favorite game and or games now?
Well, the last 5 years of all the games that I've played, probably the one that I hold in the highest regard is Wolfenstein: The New Order. I've played that game all the way through a number of times. Uh, I think I've gotten like every achievement just except for playing it on the hardest difficulty because that sort of thing isn't as fun to me. But I just from a storytelling perspective and a gameplay perspective, the New Order for me is like a masterpiece. Um, I I'm trying to think. Like, I'm also I've played over 200 hours of Breath of the Wild because I I don't know, that game has a weird hold on me. I'm on my second full playthrough of it right now, and I was like transfixed by it, and then I was disappointed in it, and now I'm back to being transfixed. My experience with it is bizarre. Like there's a point where it seems like the possibilities are endless, and then you realize the limitations of the systems, and then once you're okay with those, you start to see, like, really appreciate just how unbelievably detailed the world is. Like I'm there are still little things that I'm seeing and noticing in the environment that just sort of I bookmarked a little zone because I'm planning to make a video about my experience with Breath of the Wild sooner or later. I started a little spot on the map. There's in Hyrule Field, there's all these little ruins of old houses and things. And there's this one like busted down shack that it isn't important. And there's like one bokoblin by there. Uh, and there's no treasure or anything, but I just noticed that there was a single arrow stuck into the side of it that you could pick up. And I just like the fact that there was an arrow there, and I'd never seen like a stray arrow in a ruin like that before. Maybe I have. There's so much in that game, it's easy to forget little things like that. Because I do know that there are places where like arrows are placed strategically, but just that particular one stuck with me. Like that tells a story. And there are so many little things like that. As much as the main narrative of the game kind of leaves a lot to be desired, the environmental storytelling is top notch.
Okay. And not too long ago, the big old conference of E3 happened, and so in a previous episode, some chums of mine talked about who we felt won. And if you've been following E3, who do you feel came out on top during it?
Yeah, I live streamed the whole thing, and this is an interesting year because all of the things I'm most excited for aren't coming out this year. A lot of E3 was next year is going to be a big year for games. One of the things that I'm really excited about is Halo Infinite. I'm a huge fan of the Halo franchise. Despite its many faults, I'm sort of tethered to it, whether I like it or not at this point. And I'm excited that they're taking their time with this new game because Halo 5 had some issues, but I was expecting it to be another game that came out in November, and I'm glad that it's not because there's already, between Pokemon Sword and Shield and Death Stranding, I'm going to have a lot to get through in November. But for me, I think I was the most excited watching the Microsoft conference of all things, just because they had such a weird variety of little games, and almost all of them are games that are not Microsoft exclusive. They just sort of are showing up on Microsoft platforms. I think just the fun of seeing the like the Baldur's Gate remaster followed by Microsoft Flight Simulator back to back. There was just this weird, like, one of the people that I was watching with just flipped her lid. Like, they're just going after me now. They're just trying to capture my childhood. And so seeing like Ori and the Will of the Wisp looks gorgeous, and there are a lot of little indie games that looked excellent, and that was the one that really struck me. But I think if we're looking in terms of what was actually presented, it would have to be Nintendo, because I mean, they did two really, really long-awaited Smash characters with the Hero and Banjo-Kazooie, and they with Animal Crossing gameplay, and with like Luigi's Mansion 3, and oh gosh, what? Oh, there's the new Fire Emblem. I'm not a Fire Emblem person, but I know a lot of people are super excited for that. There's just so many, like, Nintendo. It almost feels unfair at this point to put anybody else in the same field as Nintendo. I feel like for the last 4 or 5 years, Nintendo has just been going so hard and so successfully that it kind of defies explanation, especially considering kind of the way things were looking in the era of the Wii U. It's exciting as a lifelong fan of Nintendo. There's a part of me that feels vindicated for my years defending the GameCube from Sony fanboys on forums and the internet in the early 2000s. Or like, who's laughing now? But yeah, I guess the short answer would be Nintendo.
Yeah, I'm 100% biased in Nintendo's favor, and I will always admit to that. But yep, the Dragon Quest person, all of the indies, Animal Crossing, Sword and Shield, Link's Awakening, all that stuff.
I keep forgetting that Link's Awakening is happening. I'm so excited for that. I'm a little bit bummed that it's a full price game, because it is a remake of a Game Boy game, and all the fancy graphics in the world won't change the fact that you can beat it in like 4 or 5 hours. And I'm not opposed to paying I'm not opposed to paying $60 for a game that short, but it is sort of like, I don't know. I've mixed feelings about it, but then again, I would much rather them get paid for their work. I guess I'll be. I guess I'll support artists that I like.
Yeah, moving on to this completely disjointed list of topics on my list of things. So, if you were working on script for another video of yours, and the gameplay mechanics specifically was the topic of the day, what would you say is your least favorite gameplay mechanic, like in any game, regardless of whether or not you really like it or not?
Hunger. Hunger and any sort of persistent stamina in general. Anything that's like a meter that is basically just a ticking clock that you have to wind again at some point. It's a mechanical nod towards quote unquote realism, but from a gameplay perspective, it isn't really valuable to me, because metaphorically it doesn't do much. It just, I guess you could say that hunger in real life does the same thing, where you get hungry no matter what you're doing, and it is like a ticking clock, and it's like, no, I want to be working right now, but I'm hungry and I have to go eat. Gosh dang it. But like, it's just, I think that like when Minecraft added those survival elements, I've been playing Minecraft long enough to remember a time before survival with like actual like hunger as its means of depleting health. I that really frustrated me, and I've really never been able to play like survival mode since then, because it doesn't feel like a fulfilling gameplay mechanic. There's no way to like master it. It's just, like I said, it's just a ticking clock. And there are circumstances in which I think it works, but or I can imagine ones in which it works, but just generally speaking, I don't like a game that penalizes you for getting too into playing it. But it depends on the game, right? Like sometimes is like, I'm thinking of games that are generally fun and sort of escapist. But yeah, like survival mechanics in general always just distract me and feel like they're a way to artificially inflate the running time of your game, which is kind of how I felt about Red Dead Redemption 2. I played that game for a grand total of like 3 hours, and then I sold it. And I found the mechanics of that game kind of disgusting on a number of levels, which I won't get into too much, because I could talk about that forever, because I've gotten into arguments with friends about this. But generally it feels like that's a game that's like a lot of anything that feels mostly designed to cater towards the image of realism is done to artificially pad out the runtime and create a sense of like sunk cost on the part of the player, so that they feel like they've played something that was premium. So like Rockstar is excellent at making very polished, very gorgeous, intricate, systemic games that ultimately don't amount to much. But there's so much effort that clearly went into it, that you kind of come out of it feeling like, well, that has to have been there for some reason, right? And it just, to me, feels like it comes down to like labor exploitation in the case of Rockstar, where they are exploiting their labor abhorrently to ends that make absolutely no sense to me from a gameplay perspective. So it kind of goes in a lot of different directions for me. But yeah, I'd say like survival mechanics that just artificially inflate the runtime and make a game outstay its welcome and kind of take away from the actual fun experience of the game. Sort of, those are my least favorite mechanics.
And after practically screaming at the part of the Insane trilogy of Crash Bandicoot, I realized that I'm really not fond of the live system anymore. After getting through Hollow Knight, I realized I'm also not fond of checkpoints that set you back far enough that you have to go through like a minute of platforming just to get back to the spot where you were before.
Yeah, I've run into the same thing playing Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. I was really excited for that because I enjoy the Souls games in a general sense. And this was the first one that I was on board with, like the day that it came out. So I was excited. So I got it on day one, and I played it for a few hours and really enjoyed it. But I found the experience extremely stressful, and I haven't touched it since then. And I've been thinking about why. And I think it really does have to do with the fact that there's so much emphasis on this idea of boss encounters and enemy encounters as puzzles that you have to solve. And I like that idea quite a bit. And in Sekiro, that gameplay loop is satisfying because you have a very limited set of tools that you can use, where it feels just complicated enough that it is like a challenge, but it's not this like overly obtuse interface of like 1,000 different things that you can do at once. But the problem is in the Souls formula that requires you to do it over and over and over again, and the high stakes of losing things when you die, and like certain resources being limited and others not necessarily being limited, and the distinction being unclear. there are resources that it doesn't make sense to me why there's a limit, why you don't spawn with like a full pouch of the like ammunition for your arm weapons and stuff like that. But what bugged me playing it was feeling like I've solved the puzzle of this boss. I understand their move patterns, but now I just have to solve this puzzle again like a dozen times because I've solved like this. It's a 3-stage puzzle. You solve stage 1, you get to stage 2, you fail it, then you have to go back. You have to solve a dozen other tiny puzzles, and then you get back to the boss and you solve stage 1. You brute force your way through stage 2. You get to stage 3, you lose. You got to do it all again, and it's to me like that's not fun. What I like about a game like Celeste is when you die, you're back at the start of the room that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is like, that's just forgiving enough. There just comes a point where it gets to being really tedious and no longer fun, and I fail to see the point. And I kind of am feeling like FromSoft has sort of fallen into the trap of feeling like they have to cater to the idea that they make these brutally hard, difficult, punishing games. But yeah, I feel that like I don't enjoy that gameplay loop as much anymore. And I was loving Hollow Knight, and I haven't returned to it for a while for that like same reason. Is it there is a level of like the punishment is just feels a bit too harsh for the type of game that it is. And I think this is part of why it's important that different games have like more accessibility options, because I know it's such a contentious issue, and I think it's pointlessly contentious, but I don't really see why there can't be some ways to natively modify like a FromSoft game so that it's a little bit easier for people who don't have the time to solve a million puzzles over and over and over again. Like some people have lives, and some people have a hard time with like the mechanical mastery, and there's I don't know, it just that sort of thing just bugs me. Got a little off topic there, but yeah,
that's fine. So you mentioned a bit of your Pokemon love earlier, but if you were able to create a Pokemon gym leader based off of you, like what would your team be? And I guess if you had to pick a type to specialize in, what would your specialty be?
So I've been thinking about this. There is the joke in Griffin McElroy's Nuzlocke run for Polygon that everybody is like, I'm going to come at you with 2 bug type Pokemon. Good job, kid. And the idea of like type related gyms is just sort of inherently funny, and Pokemon, when you know how the like rock paper scissors works. I, not to be a stereotype again, but the answer that I keep coming back to is that I would want to have an EV gym with like evolutions. And that's such an obvious thing, and I feel like that's an answer that basically any trans person would get. But I love it because it doesn't feel like an obvious sort of break of the formula, in the sense of I could say, oh, I want to be a I don't know, a dragon fire type gym. I don't know enough about the meta of like different types, and I was like I said, I played red, and then I played blue, I played yellow, and then I played silver, and then I didn't play another Pokemon game until Sun. So there's a huge middle ground of Pokemon that I have no idea who the heck they are. So I don't know the like distribution of types and everything. But for me, I just I like the idea of having a team that is themed and type diverse.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't seem like it would be that difficult to overcome as a player. it would just require some like strategic swapping of who you have in your team. And I just think it'd be cute. And I would also want to end it with or like have it start with Eevee, and you're like, oh, you're starting with Eevee, huh? And then it goes to Flareon, and then it goes to Leafeon, and then etc. Like, I don't know. That just sounds fun to me.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, if you could pick a single character from any franchise, any game ever made, ever, and make a game about that specific character, who would it be and why?
Hmm. 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 Oh gosh, the field is so wide. I think I I would like to see a game about Meryl after the Link's Awakening, or after Link's Awakening, because she's such an interesting character, and she's a part of Koholint, which is a dream world. So it's unclear, like, what does Koholint still exist after Link wakes up? Does she Marin, not Meryl? Does she still exist? Meryl's a Pokemon. Does she still exist after Link wakes up? I would like to see like a Majora's Mask style game about her. In part because I just think it would be nice if we had a Zelda game where there wasn't you weren't a boy natively. That'd be kind of neat. Fingers crossed for Breath of the Wild 2. Uh, I just think like the Zelda franchise in general has a lot of really interesting side characters that I always want to spend more time with. Um, the Ocarina of Time is just chock full of them. I want to know what Saria got up to. I want to know what I want to know what Sheik was doing. Like what Zelda became Sheik for a while and was just sort of what doing uh like Antifa protest against Ganon's rule, waiting for Link to wake up. Like that sounds sick. I want to see that story.
Yeah. If I had that power, I'd make a Paper Mario spinoff about Best Girl Vivian.
Oh yeah.
She's my favorite character in that game. It's because she looks the coolest, she's got the coolest powers, and you know, personally, like way back in the day, like when I did some research on Vivian, and of course it wasn't brought over to the North American version, and you find out that she's transgender, and that was the first time I ever really heard that word in an actual context. So I was able to
Wow.
like learn a bit there. And just I don't know, the fact that she's a shadow and she can melt into the ground, like the possibilities are plentiful for me.
Yeah, I didn't know that she was trans. That's amazing.
It was not brought over in the Nintendo, and like I think that definitely not in the American versions, and maybe not in the German version of the game back in the day. If you
Wow.
if you look it up on the Super Mario, the bizarrely expansive Super Mario wiki, you can see little blits and blops of how you know Bedlam, her older, shorter, blue-headed sister, just well. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm losing track.
It's
In the
okay.
game, in the American version, Bedlam just calls her straight up ugly, whereas in the other versions, like the specifics vary on the language, but she like explicitly misgenders her.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I'll have to look into that. That's interesting.
Also, I've learned that apparently Goombella, another character in Paper Mario, also thinks she's cute, which I'm just latching on to, like no one believes.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
So, yes. So, what future releases are you looking forward to the most?
I right now am very excited for Pokemon Sword and Shield and Death Stranding. I love Hideo Kojima. I'm excited for an HD Pokemon game. I have no idea what Death Stranding is going to be, and I'm okay with that. I admire all the people who are spending a lot of time deconstructing all the trailers and trying to figure out what the game is going to be. I'm ready for that game to wash over me and for Kojima to just reach his little fingers into my brain and just kind of squeeze. And I'm willing to suffer for that particular bit of art. I'm very excited for that experience. Looking forward, I am excited for the possibility also of like seeing GameCube games on the Switch. I think that's a big wish list request for a lot of people is more more virtual console offerings. I would really like if they have the Nintendo subscription thing where you get access to all these NES games. And I'm so bored of NES games. Like I'm glad that they're there, but I want give me something from my era. Like if it's gotta be 2D, then make it do some SNES too. But like give me some N64 games. Give me some GameCube games. I would love to see the non HD remaster version of Wind Waker ported to the eShop because I prefer it to the HD remaster. But yeah, it's weird that like I'm looking forward to games that already exist, but I want the opportunity to play them again since they're hard to find. And like I like it when old games come back into the conversation because it always invites reflection. And I know sooner or later they're going to release like a Metroid Prime trilogy collection, and I'll finally be able to play the Metroid Prime games because I borrowed the original and was terrible at it, and I've wanted to get back to them forever. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for.
I'd guesstimate that'll happen the closer we get to Metroid Prime 4.
Yeah, you're probably right there, which means it won't happen for a couple years.
Yep. Now we move on to the final question, which everyone who's ever been on my show always understands perfectly, and there's never confusion of any sort. So, Sarah, in your opinion, is video games?
Is video games. I think there's a hypothetical possibility that yes, but it's hard to say because you know the discourse is always very hot and very challenging, and it can be difficult to sort of parse the semiotics of what we're really saying when we say certain words. And I think like you look at the term video games and you see video and you see games. Like video implies certain synesthetic elements of the visual medium, but games sort of imply a more intellectual kind of interpersonal exchange. And you wonder about the synthesis of the two, and you're trying to figure out like, what is this? Is this? And then you look at something like the NVIDIA game phone that came out, what, 12, 14, I don't remember how many years ago it was. The N-Gage, there it is. I was trying to remember the name of that stupid phone. And you're wondering, like, is that video games? Is that what that is? And, you know, it doesn't exist anymore. So I think the answer is no. But as far as bringing it down to a more local level, I think the answer would probably be if I'm looking at like my collection of plastic boxes with paper inserts and little sort of circular storage mediums that, yeah, probably. I think there's some video games. I think there is, yeah.
Okay. So, with that, we come to the conclusion of this particular episode of the Pumpkin Copter Cast. I'd like to thank Sarah Zedig of Let's Talk About Stuff for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a delightful conversation.
You're welcome. And if any of the -7 people who watched this show enjoyed it, you can like and subscribe. You can follow me on the Twitters at tgorman83. And if for some reason you wish to give me money, you can go to patreon.com/thepumpkincoptercast. This doesn't have to be a lot, just some. I'm not really that greedy right now. And yes, before we sign off, Sarah, is there anything you wish to plug?
Yeah, I'll just say if you want to follow my stuff, you can find me on Twitter at HMSNoFun. And yeah, Let's Talk About Stuff on YouTube, and the Trans Questioning Podcast is my podcast.
Okay, and yep, this has been the Pumpkin Coptercast, and as I say at the end of every show, have a gourd day.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, you can blame Ashley Jenkins, creator of Grapple Force Arena, for that catchphrase.
Ah.
So, bye.
Bye.